Hey everyone, we'll talk about an overview of disaster management in this video. So yes, let us understand what is disaster management per se. So it is an unfortunate event or an incident that is most unprecedented as far as the negative consequences are concerned. It basically damages property. It basically injures people or probably even takes away life, something. So this is what disaster is all about. It is an element at risk. About what? The society, about huge losses, potential losses, not only in terms of lives but also in terms of property. There is a severe damage to the economy, ecological, environmental per se. So what happens to it after damage? It leaves the society in much poorer condition than what it was actually before. Disruption happens because of disaster, because of that unfortunate incident or an event. Now what is that unfortunate incident or event? It can be catastrophic, as a cyclone has been mentioned out here, can be an earthquake, it can be a terrorist attack, it can be widespread of a virus or a bacteria or toxin that can be possibly there. So that is what the unfortunate incident is all about. It remember, it leaves an earmarked negative consequences over the society, community, and people's life thereby. So, hazard, damage potential, what do we do around it? As a society, as a community, there are many plentiful of things that are at risk. What is at risk? Is it the environment, ecology imbalances, lives of people, properties that we talk about it? We have everything to lose for. Nothing good actually happens out of a disaster or any unfortunate incident. So what do we go around it? We need to have this awareness of the disaster that is waiting to happen, because the potential damage is of catastrophic nature, of gigantic natures, or gigantic scale, if I may say so. And what do we look into it? We are looking to reduce our losses, to go forward to a much more stable society or community, more communities being more resilient, and a quicker uh, spring back to the recovery, normalcy of our life as and when on basis. So, damage potential, let us look into the elements at risk, both the natural elements and the societal or the community elements. If it is the natural elements, we are talking about the river, the stream, the water bodies that is provided by nature, the low-lying areas, the sea coast, and the slopes of the hill that goes around it. So basically, we have at plains or at sea level or at mountainous regions. That is what natural features is all about. It. What about the societal elements? It is you and me. It is people amongst us. It is your society, my society. It's the community of overall. It is the livestock. It is the flora and fauna which help us to sustain a good standard of living. I'm talking about dwellings, be it permanent, semi-permanent huts, or buildings per se, the weak building, the agriculture, the standing crops, the horticulture crops, livelihood tools, unsecured personal assets, and public infrastructure. Everything is at risk because of the hazard, because of the disaster, because of the emergency that might creep in because of certain incident which is unprecedented. Scale of disaster depends not only on the lead time available. Now, what is the lead time available? The incident, that unfortunate incident, and your time to react to it is the lead time. So if you can have a pre-warning season, you might have a good amount of lead time to react. If there is a pre-warning season that there is a cyclone or typhoon or hurricane is going to strike a particular area, so probably you will take safe harbors, you will take go to the safe havens altogether, safer destination at a higher altitude. So that is what will happen. But if it is without knowledge, it strikes, let's say an earthquake, the lead time is minimal and probably it creates a catastrophic damages. Intensity of the hazard is also to be the question. Duration, for how long the hazard has been going around. If it is raining continuously, or it is, or there is a cyclone that has been blowing away the place with a large speed of over 150 miles per hour, probably causing damage to the property. Spatial extent, it's the amount of extent, the geographical space that has been impacted, density of the population, how many people are resident of that particular location. That needs to be a certain time of occurrence. It might be the day of the week, time of the day, and so that needs to be taken into consideration. This in totality will tell me the amount of vulnerabilities present at that element of risk. Remember, disaster is nothing but hazard times vulnerability. It is the potential negative consequences that it is likely to happen times how vulnerable you are, how well you can cope up with that kind of potential catastrophic events. So that is what disaster is all about it. So elemental at risk is you and me. That means I'm talking about the community, the people, the livestock, the rural housing stock, the houses, vulnerable crops, tree, telephones, electric poles, any man-made structures, boat, looms, working elements, personal property, electricity, water, samples, infrastructure support, you name it, and we have it. This is what is exactly happening around here. The elements of risk are at play. So aims of disaster management is to avoid, is to reduce such negative consequences. The potential losses from the hazard, assured prompt and appropriate assistance to the victim, faster relief aid to the victim, faster recovery time for the community, achieving a rapid and durable recovery as the case might be. So yes, what we are looking into it, we are talking about DMC, the disaster management cycle. So we have something called pre-disaster, during disaster, and post-disaster. In pre-disaster, we can only plan and prepare. During disaster is when it actually the event has occurred, is occurring as we speak, what we can do around it. And the third most step would be post disaster, after the event have crossed. Now that is where we need to understand how do we go around it. In a normal phase is the preparation phase, then comes the emergency and the disaster strikes. This is what we will be talking about, the disaster striking. This is disaster. Remember, that is what we should be looking into it. Then once the disaster happens, the emergency phases takes place, rescue and relief. We're talking of rehabilitation of people, reconstruction of buildings, society, lives, integration of national disaster plan, and probably mitigation way back to normalizations. And again, the cycle continues, creeping up and up as the disaster strikes, so we have a better coping up mechanism, because every disaster will teach us something and we need to cope it up so that our reaction for the next pending disaster will be much effective one. And that is how things are going to be taking shape. Stages of disaster, what do I say, before, during, and after. Three stages, let's say, of cyclone. Let us look into it. So in Jan and April, probably what we are talking about, May, month of May. So well before weeks or well before months, if you're aware of when the cyclone is supposed to strike, just before hours, what you will do, actual time, as in when on basis. We are talking about rescue, relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. What are we looking at? If the event has occurred and is occurring, you try to rescue people and save as much of property, as much of life possible, or otherwise then probably provide them relief, potable water, medicine, food, and electricity network. We talk about rehabilitation, putting them into a new houses, ensuring that the society is being crumpled back to the normalcy by building road infrastructures and so on and so forth. And this is what we call the reconstruction phase is all about it. The role players in disaster, there are basically two role players or three role players, if I may say so. One, that is the people. Second is village elders. Third would be the governmental development officers. What are people talking about? I'm talking about you. I'm talking about me, the individual people, the household, the volunteers. Village elders are opinion leaders, caste leader, community leader, leaders, religion leader, leaders who have been elected representative of the people. These are our village leaders or people who have some special abilities in terms of teachers, doctors, engineers, retired personnel, police personnel. The governmental developmental officers are who have the power in hand. I'm talking about the agricultural people, the medical engineer, the housing, the roads, the building construction, the irrigation department, the revenue department, the public department, and you know it. It's the government mechanism at work, at place. They are the only players who can make some kind of sizable impact. That is people who are volunteers, who are affected, the community, the village elders are the opinion leaders that goes around it, and the governmental development officers, as the case might be. Definition of vulnerability to extent to which a community structure, service, or a geographical area are likely to be damaged or disrupted by the impact of a particular disaster hazard. That is what vulnerability is all about. Vulnerability is propensity of things to be damaged by a hazard. That is what needs to be understood. We need to keep an eye for it. It is the chance of me, perhaps, if something untoward happens to me, how much time will I recover to react or come back to normalcy? The longer the time I take to come back to normalcy, the more vulnerable I am. The less the time I take is the less vulnerable or more resilient I am, should I say. So disaster preparedness aims at minimizing the adverse or the negative consequences, effects of a hazard through effective precautionary actions. And there can be plentiful of, let's say, in a river, you can have an embankment done prior to flood actually happening around it. For an earthquake prone zone, you should construct buildings which are not very tall, number one, and earthquake resistant. Number two, so this is precautionary actions ensure timely, appropriate, and efficient organization to deliver the emergency responses following the impact of disaster as the case might be. We'll talk about preparedness is the vulnerability analysis mapping to include resources, access strengthening requirements and executive funding of the preparedness to be arranged as on when on basis. We need to understand time and again what is expected and how do we come forward to it. We need to mobilize resources which might be in cash, which might be in kind, or at times we require both cash and kind per se. People cooperation through political leaders or through elders, volunteers, and non-governmental organizations. Plans to include movement of resources within the time frame aim to reduce destructive elements potential of cyclone, timely appropriate relief to victims, and quick and durable recovery as the case might be. Disaster preparedness framework. What are we looking into it? We are talking about the components of preparedness, and that is about your vulnerability assessment, how well or how resilient you are, or how negatively resilient you are. Probably you're not aware of it, not prepared for it. So start planning for it. Start planning from it. If required, take help from other institutions, other work bodies. It can be police, it can be fire, it can be community service, it can be hospital, institutional framework. Then comes the informational system. Have a transparent public address system so that everybody is having the knowledge, the things as it is happening around it. Resource bases, the warning system, if possible, involve technology to understand or probably even dissect a natural disaster response mechanism, as in what to do if it is a flood, if it is earthquake, what to do, what not to do. Is there any safe havens? If there is a terrorist attack, what do you take? Where do you take shelter? So yes, we need to educate ourselves. Yes, we need to have mock drills. Yes, we need the community trainings to be done, taking places, and that is only be done time after time after time, all every rehearsal, so that at the time of eventualities, the disaster striking you, you are actually not panicking and know well in advance what to do and how to behave. Disaster warning responses are the activities as in warning, evacuation, mitigation, evacuation of people from their place, evacuation of vital documents, in ensuring the installation which are pertinent to the upkeep of the modern life should be in places, assessment, search and rescue, so emergency relief, logistic and supply. We talk about communication. We talk about information. We talk about survivor response and coping. Medical supplies to be taken care of. We are talking about security. We are talking about coordinations. Expedite rehabilitation and reconstruction as soon as possible. Remember, at the time of adversity, it's a multi-pronged approach that one needs to take for a faster recovery, a faster rehabilitation, and definitive reconstruction. And you should always endeavor to build back better. Absolutely, that should be the motto around here. So, element at risk, everything in the floodplain plane is at risk. Everything, the earth, the soluble structures, what not, the human beings, the livestock, the plants, the flora, the fauna, everything, buried services and utilities, food stores, crops, livestock, anything and everything goes down the drain. And it is floods and water that we're talking about it. Main mitigation strategy is to use the use of land responsibly. Do not go for deforestation, engineering of structures, elevation of structures if possible, flood control structures in terms of embankment that we need to go around it. And did I say reforestation? No deforestation, only reforestation. Plant more tree, watershed management. This helps the soil to capture and stay stronger. What happens if there are cyclones? What happens if there are strong winds which are blowing at more than 150 miles per hour? What are we looking into it? The element of risk are lightweight structures will be blown off. Elevated utilities, power, communication will be disrupted. Fishing boats and other maritime industries would be affected very severely. So how do we mitigate such thing? Probably we have a structural engineering measures, ensure that they are a bit of a swinging natures so that they can tolerate some sort of a high winds, plantation of windbreaks as on when on basis. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video till the very end.